Greetings, lover of monotonous narration of Wikipedia articles accompanied by slowly moving images. It's time to dissect the legendary lightsaber, the weapon of Jedi and Sith from Star Wars. In this episode, we will try to answer the question of whether it's possible to create such a device in our world, at least in theory, and determine how functional such a weapon would be in real combat. But if you enjoy this format, be sure to support the video with a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. So let's begin. Within the Star Wars universe, the design of the lightsaber is fairly well described, and the principles of its operation seem logical and understandable. However, in the real world, creating such a weapon is impossible either due to the absence of crucial components or due to conflicts with the laws of modern physics. If we don't delve too deeply into details, the lightsaber can be described as an energy beam stabilized by a magnetic field. Interestingly, almost all the articles I've read claim that a plasma beam is used in the lightsaber, which I disagree with. To understand why, we first need to clarify what plasma is. Plasma is an ionized gas, one of the four fundamental states of matter. In the case of the lightsaber, we're interested in gas heated to at least 4,000 degrees, or preferably even higher. Let's now delve into how this weapon operates in the Star Wars universe. The lightsaber contains a diacetyl power cell that contains a high quantity of fictional gas called tibanna. Where there's gas, there can potentially be plasma, and it all adds up. Indeed, in reality, creating a meter-long plasma beam is entirely possible. The folks at Hacksmith Industries have already achieved this feat, producing a meter-long beam of low-temperature plasma at 4,000 degrees Celsius, emanating from a plasma torch, a device for creating plasma. The boys even figured out how to color the plasma in various hues, but their device didn't quite resemble a full-fledged lightsaber. Firstly, to maintain a reasonable operational time for such a device, a substantial volume of gas is necessary, which one would have to carry around constantly. As you can imagine, having a hefty tank on one's back significantly impairs mobility, making it quite a stretch for someone to become a Jedi. Moreover, wearing such a tank is outright dangerous, considering it could explode, scattering shrapnel dozens of meters around. By the way, in theory, the diacetyl power cell also carries the risk of exploding because it likely contains gas under tremendous pressure. Secondly, the plasma beam emanating from the plasma torch doesn't possess the familiar properties of the lightsaber from Star Wars. It cannot reflect physical objects, and even melting metal takes place at a very slow pace. It might seem like that's the end of the discussion, but no. The thing is, the operating principle of a plasma cutter isn't evident in the design of the fictional lightsaber. In the schematic, there's a certain primary crystal attached to the diacetyl element, which then directs energy to the focusing crystal. The presence of crystals indicates that the lightsaber operates not as a plasma cutter but as a laser. A laser differs in that its destructive capabilities are derived from photons, particles of light, rather than from ionized gas. To make it easier to understand, let me explain the role of the crystal in creating a laser beam using the example of a ruby laser. The ruby crystal serves as the active medium. To generate a laser beam from the ruby, it needs to be pumped with energy from an external source. The external source used is a spiral xenon lamp, which surrounds the cylindrical-shaped crystal from all sides. When the lamp is turned on, it emits a tremendous amount of light. Then, thanks to its special properties, the ruby begins stimulated emission of photons, thus creating the laser beam. Finally, after the photons appear, they need to be focused and directed into a beam using optical resonators, essentially lenses. I hope that explanation is clear. By the way, according to the available lightsaber schematic, more or less the same process occurs, except instead of a xenon lamp, a diacetyl power cell serves as the external source. In other words, the crystals are pumped with energy from the tibanna gas. And how can a crystal be energized with gas? Obviously, this gas must first be ignited, perhaps even transforming into plasma. Next, the energy from the burned gas first pumps the primary crystal, and then the photons from it go to the main focusing crystal. It's this crystal that gives the blade of the lightsaber its colored glow and imparts a certain degree of power to it. And finally, the final beam hits the lens, forming the blade of the lightsaber. And now, I have a question. Why is this beam called a plasma beam if, in the presence of crystals focusing photons, it's nothing but a beam of light? Presumably, in a lightsaber, there could indeed be plasma, but only as an energy source for pumping crystals, which in turn creates induced emission. So, according to the lightsaber's design, its blade is a laser beam, not a plasma arc. Otherwise, the crystals would simply be unnecessary here. What is the problem with creating such a laser in reality? Firstly, we haven't invented crystals like those in Star Wars. The thing is, the same ruby laser usually operates pulsed and for a very short time, otherwise its crystal will simply crack from overheating. For it to work more or less continuously and reliably, a cooling system is required. Moreover, the diameter of the output beam of a ruby laser, as well as its destructive capability, is much smaller than that of a lightsaber. Secondly, after solving the problem with the crystals, we would need to understand how to stabilize the sword's blade and make the light particles attract a meter away from the hilt. For these purposes, there is a magnetic stabilizing ring in the lightsaber. Presumably, it should create a magnetic field and attract the energy beam. However, the problem is that it won't affect the light particles. Photons do not possess an electric charge, and electromagnetic fields only act on charged particles. Of course, there is a theory about influencing photons with magnetic waves through quantum fluctuations, but I won't delve into explaining it because we're still very far from realizing a lightsaber. There was also a previous belief that photons could be attracted by gravity from a sufficiently massive object, such as a black hole. So, one might think that the magnetic ring creates a gravitational field of sufficient power to attract photons. However, it's now known that photons aren't attracted to a black hole. They simply orbit around it because the black hole bends space with its mass. Now it becomes clear why creating a lightsaber from plasma seems like a much more realistic task. Plasma can be stabilized with a magnetic field. The only thing is, the magnets must cover the entire plasma beam with a certain periodicity. However, even with such complexity, this seems more achievable than solving the problem with photons. Essentially, we could conclude here. But even if future technologies allow for the creation of a stable plasma beam or somehow processing photons, there will still be a few unsolvable problems. Firstly, the blades of lightsabers would be immaterial, whether they're made of plasma or photons. Light particles aren't matter at all, and plasma is just one of its 4 aggregate states. So, when two lightsabers collide, they would most likely just pass through each other rather than engage in an epic clash. Secondly, such a weapon would possess an incredibly intense brightness, and without protective adaptations for the visual organs, the retina of the human eye would quickly bid farewell to such strong radiation. Thirdly, even if all the aforementioned problems were solved and a device precisely matching the lightsaber from Star Wars were obtained, such a thing would be monstrously dangerous as a close combat weapon. This fact is even noted within the lore of the Star Wars universe. One wrong move, and the energy mass can deprive its owner of their own limb. This occurs largely due to the difficulty of controlling such a weapon, as the lightsaber blade is immaterial, lacking the balance of a conventional steel sword. Even Jedi and Sith spend years mastering lightsabers, although they may harness a certain force. The energy of the surrounding universe aids them, particularly in using lightsabers. At the moment, a weapon like a lightsaber is incredibly difficult to achieve even in theory, and it's also deadly and impractical for real combat. Share your thoughts on this topic in the comments, and also suggest topics for future episodes. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you're satisfied. Thanks, everyone. See you in the next video.